Let's unpack Hustle Recovery then, all right? Because that's what you're saying. You're saying that Smiles for Recovery was helping your clients. Let's talk about who those clients are and what Hustle Recovery does.
Yeah. So go back to day one. I will. My recovery journey started on September the 20th of 2019. At about 7 o'clock in the evening on a Friday evening, the Rutherford County Police or Rutherford County Sheriff's Department and Murfreesboro Police Department kicked my front door in.
Wow.
They came in with about 25 agents in full riot gear with machine guns, screaming, "Get on the ground." And it was the end to a years-long investigation into my drug activities.
Okay.
That night I was incarcerated. I spent 68 days in the Rutherford County Jail. I was sitting there trying to make a bond of $110,000. I was caught red-handed with a quarter pound of meth and several firearms, one of which was stolen. I'd never been in trouble in my life before that night. But that night I earned myself 6 felonies, which I'm still serving a sentence on today.
Really?
Yes, sir. So I sat there 68 days, talking to my mom, bless her heart, every day, like, "Man, if you'll just come and get me, I'll straighten up." And she would tell me every day, "I'm not coming to get you until you go to rehab." And of course, every day I'd say, "Hey, I'll go today." And she'd say, "No, you're not ready yet." And she'd hang up on me. On day 65, she decided that she would come and get me. It took me 3 days to go to do a source hearing. That way they could see where the funds from my bond were coming from. I kept my promise to my mom and I went to rehab. I attended an IOP program in South Arkansas, where I'm from, because at that time I did not have health insurance and I didn't know how to navigate the treatment
No doubt.
system here in Tennessee. So I had one friend that I grew up with that worked at a facility in South Arkansas who was able to get me in on a grant. That facility isn't really where I got clean and sober. It was actually in the rooms of AA, in particular a place called the Open Door.
Wow.
I walked to a meeting there twice a day. I did 180 meetings in the first 90 days on top of an IOP program and seeing a therapist. In February of 2020, I graduated that program and I moved back to Nashville. When I got back to Nashville, I was homeless. I did not have a job. I didn't have a vehicle. I didn't have a bank account. I was literally starting from nothing.
How old were you at this time?
This was in 2020, so I was 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that puts things in perspective for people right there.
Yeah. I spent 3 years in heavy addiction. Before that, I owned a construction company and did pretty well. Most of my addiction started after my divorce in 2016. The drugs were kind of a solution to the things that I was dealing with, the loneliness, the depression, the things that I was going through, with that. The drugs that I was doing made me feel better about me, and when I had a pocket full of drugs and money, a lot of people came around and I was popular again. So anyway, so I get back to town and I've been self-employed since I was 18 years old. So real quickly, I was able to get back on my feet.
Did you have a choice to be self-employed versus not? Is there because you probably weren't real hireable at that moment.
Oh, at that moment, I definitely wasn't very hireable.
You didn't have a whole lot of choice, did you?
Well, I hadn't been convicted yet. So
okay.
I was able to go back to work for a company I'd been a subcontractor for 20 years off and on, Window World. And I went back to work for them as a sales rep, and I did really well. I was the number one sales rep in the state of Tennessee the last 2 years I was with them. So real quickly, I was able to kind of get my life back together. I got an apartment and I got a car and I opened a bank account. And I was kind of putting my life back together, waiting to go to trial in October. And on May the 1st of 2020, I woke up to a phone call that morning from a friend of mine's mother, Miss Judy, to tell me that one of my best friends, Josh Barley, had died of a fentanyl overdose that morning. I remember just sitting in my bed crying uncontrollably and just feeling like, man, I need to do something. I didn't know exactly what to do. So what I did is I put a post on Facebook that basically said, look, man, if you're struggling with this, you don't have to die. There are people out here who will help you.
Mm.
And I knew that because some folks that I didn't know had just helped me.
Right.
Excuse me.
It's all right.
And I said, look, if you don't know where to find help, here's my number. Call me.
Mm.
Nick, I had absolutely no plan of what I would do when these people called.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I didn't even know if anybody would call. I actually only had a few of my friends in mind whenever I put that post up who I knew were still using.
Okay.
About 20 days later, I get the first calls. First day, I get 6 calls, all the same, people I'd never met in my life who said, hey, a friend of mine shared this post on Facebook, says you can get people into rehab. And I remember looking at my phone going, where the heck did I say that? Because I had absolutely no clue how to get people into treatment. I remember going to bed that night really down on myself, and I remember praying to God and just saying, Lord, I've really put my foot in my mouth this time. I have no clue how to help these people. They all want to go to treatment, and I barely got myself into treatment. So I prayed about it. I went to bed, and when I woke up the next morning, I knew what I had to do. I had to teach myself how to get people into treatment. So I basically sat at my kitchen table with my iPhone and a notebook and a pen, and I just started Googling treatment facilities in a 200-mile radius of Nashville.
Okay.
And I would call these facilities as they popped up on Google, and I would say, hi, my name is Troy, and I'm a recovering addict, and I'm sick of watching these people die. Could you please tell me how to get people into your treatment facility? Fast forward 4.5 years to today, Hustle Recovery now works with over 50 different treatment facilities and over 100 different sober living houses. We've been able to connect over 5,200 people to treatment in the last 3.5 years since we started tracking it.
Wow.
Through doing that work, I avoided prison. My first offer from the DA was 24 years at 60%. By the time
In jail.
in prison, yes,
prison.
yeah.
All right.
My attorney had actually called me. A wonderful guy named Joey Fuson, who's a partner of mine today, called me and said, look, man, you might as well get your mind right because you're going to have to do some time. And I'd made peace with that, and I made the decision that I was going to try to help as many people as I could until I went to prison. So in October, we go to the trial readiness hearing, the hearing you have right before you start your trial proceedings. And somehow the DA had caught wind of what I was doing. At that point, I'd gotten 33 people into treatment, and every time I would get someone into treatment, I would take a selfie with them. I'd post it on Facebook, and I'd say, congratulations, Nick or Justin, on a decision to change your life. Thank you to whatever facility had helped me get them into treatment. And then I would say, if you or somebody you know is struggling with addiction, just know there's help out there. Here's my number. If no one told you today, I love you, I believe in you, and God's going to see you through this. And when I got to court that day, she had all 33 of those posts printed on a separate piece of paper and spread across a desk. And that day they offered me 16 years on community corrections, which is really intense probation. And I've walked 4 of those years down, and I have 12 years left.
Wow. So first of all, like, you don't hear a lot of stories about the legal system making the right decision like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because look at all the people that wouldn't be here today if you were in prison rotting away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, that's encouraging. Like, you don't hear that very often, do you?
No, sir, you don't.
And you didn't even ask for it.
I didn't. I was very blessed. God was definitely looking out for me.
So Hustle Recovery, you're helping people get people in. So like, you got to live, okay? You got to live. And so where's, like, how do you get paid?
Well, so that's where it started.
Okay.
Today we have a huge variety of programs that we offer people. We just started out in the back of my car, just myself and a couple of my friends, just helping people get into treatment centers.
I think I asked Dr. Steven the same thing. Like, how do you fund something like this?
Yeah. So at first, it was just funded out of my pocket. I did very well selling windows, and I put about 70% of my income back into helping people get into treatment.
So you were selling windows the whole time you're doing this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, for the first 2 years of Hustle Recovery, I was still working as a full-time salesman. I think in the first year is when we opened the first sober living house. And I just happened to meet a guy who's a mutual friend of mine and his, who said, "Hey, man, I want to buy you some houses. I'll take you to dinner on Saturday and we'll talk about it." And I'm like, who the hell is out here buying people houses? I've never heard that in my life, you know. Today we have 12 properties. We provide housing for over 100 individuals who are in early recovery. We started first with just one sober living house down the road from here off of Bell Road in Antioch that housed 10 men. In the first year, I didn't see a whole lot of people stay clean and sober, to be honest. I remember having lunch at the end of that first year with my COO and my partner, John Hughes, and us just talking about, like, man, are we really helping these people? Why aren't they staying clean and sober? And John's actually who suggested it. He said, "Man, why don't we just take this back to our roots?" And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, what is Hustle Recovery at its roots? And what we are is an organization that knocks down barriers to recovery." And I said, "Okay, so elaborate on that. What do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, let's just look at it. What do people need in early recovery?" Well, first thing you need is a job. You need some programming. You need a sponsor. You need a place to lay your head. And I said, "Okay, so let's start with the job. What do people need to get back to work?" And you know, first they need to know how to ask for a job. Second of all, they need transportation back and forth. So our answer to problem number one is we started a staffing company called Sober and Serene Enterprises.
Okay.
And I went out and I got corporate partners who would hire these people who are in early recovery on the premise that if they worked for us for 6 months, that these companies would do a direct hire.
Wow.
So we've employed over 300 individuals in the last 3 years, with about 60% of those individuals going on to be direct hires at these different organizations. The next thing was, you know, these guys need to know how to get back and forth to work or have to have a way. So we just started buying old raggedy vans that were $4,000 a piece. And we made sure that people got back and forth to work. And then what we did is we created a 6-month curriculum for people. It starts with job readiness programming. We do an hour of programming in the house every day, and then we do an hour of 12-step work every day. So with that curriculum, we started with the first 2 weeks as job readiness. We do the do's and don'ts of interviewing. We do some resume building. We do workplace safety, workplace etiquette. And then it moves more into some PTSD stuff, some CBD stuff like seeking safety, recovery dynamics, and then some Gorski's relapse prevention stuff. So guys are with us for 6 months in that vocational rehabilitation program. And while they're there, we get them connected with Redstone Federal Credit Union to get savings and checking accounts set back up where they haven't had them in years. We make sure they're good with the courts. They're caught up on their child support, fines, things like that. And then they have the opportunity to save money while they're there and graduate with a full-time job. We pay around $17 an hour at most of our positions, and they get a raise to $24 an hour overnight once they do a direct hire. So
you're giving not a hand out, it's a hand up, isn't it?
Yes, sir.